Welcome to the 700 Club. President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke for the first time in a month yesterday. Their main dispute remains Israel's plan to attack the last terror stronghold in Gaza.
Well, as a result of that call, a team of Israeli officials is coming to Washington to discuss alternatives to a military operation against Rafah. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports.
Israel's prime minister says he had a long phone call with U.S. President Joe Biden about the Jewish nation's main goals in Gaza.
The elimination of Hamas, the release of all our hostages, and the promise that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel.
He's agreed to send a team to Washington to discuss major disagreements, like the Biden administration's position that Israel shouldn't invade Rafah, Hamas's last major stronghold.
Our position is that Hamas should not be allowed a safe haven in Rafah or anywhere else, but a major ground operation there would be a mistake.
Netanyahu insists Hamas will continue to be a major threat if Israel is not allowed to attack the remaining terrorist elements in Rafah. Still, the Biden administration asserts it's on board with Israel's goals, even if it appears opposing an attack on Rafah undermines those goals.
The president emphasized his bone-deep commitment to ensuring the long-term security of Israel.
The United Nations World Food Program says if the fighting doesn't halt in Gaza, nearly half of its 2 million people could starve to death.
There are about 1.1 million people in catastrophic level of hunger.
The food agency asserts if it can't get 300 trucks of aid into Gaza every day, the famine could spread all across the Gaza Strip. Israel says it's not stopping the aid trucks, but the UN fails to distribute much of the food, and trucks are often hijacked or looted by Hamas and criminal gangs. The Israeli government said its troops killed some 20 terrorists and arrested 200 more in a major hospital that Hamas tried to take back control.
Every single hospital that we've searched has been used by Hamas as a weapon of war.
The army also killed a top Hamas commander who is armed and hiding in the Shifa hospital. This morning, the White House also announced Secretary of State Blinken will visit Saudi Arabia and Egypt in coming days in an effort to broker a hostage deal and cease fire. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, I hope our government continues to put the pressure on Hamas, not on Israel. What Hamas is doing is absolutely horrific, and it didn't stop on October 7th. To use a hospital as a base of operations for a military campaign under international law, that's a war crime. To use civilians, whether it's their homes or mosques or schools or synagogues or churches as some kind of shelter, again, that's a war crime. To take hostages and keep them, civilian hostages and keep them, that's a war crime. In all this discussion of war crimes, let us keep the attention on where it really belongs. Hamas is the one that started this. Until they surrender unconditionally, until they turn all the hostages over, lay down their arms, there will be no peace. Hamas has to cease. It can't go forward. Israel can't live with Hamas in charge of Gaza. They have vowed repeatedly to wipe Israel off the map. It was in their founding charter. They're part of the Muslim Brotherhood. They're ideologues to the core, and they have vowed to repeat October 7 again and again and again. Israel can't have that. I would say America can't have that either. World peace is at stake. Hamas has to stop. That's where the pressure needs to be put to bear. Well, in other news, and this is not being reported widely, the Border Patrol arrested a Hezbollah terrorist on our southern border earlier this month. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. Border Patrol agents stopped the 22-year-old Lebanese man upon entering the United States illegally on March 9th near the border town of El Paso, Texas. Basil Abadi told officials that he trained with Hezbollah for 7 years to carry out jihad. When asked why he came to the U.S., he replied, quote, "I'm going to try to make a bomb," and named New York as his destination. Abadi later told investigators that he's been trying to escape Lebanon and Hezbollah because he does not want to kill people. The incident highlights concerns over the crisis at the southern border. BCP reports the number of encounters with individuals on the terror watch list jumped from 98 in 2022 to 172 last year in 2023. Well, here in the nation's capital, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments Monday in a major case challenging the strength of the First Amendment in the Internet age. At issue is how far the government can go in encouraging social media companies to regulate misinformation in user posts. CBN White House correspondent Abigail Robertson has more.
Justices appeared skeptical of claims that the Biden administration went too far in encouraging social media companies to moderate controversial content. They specifically addressed topics related to COVID-19 and election security.
Some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information.
Attorneys general from Louisiana and Missouri joined 5 individuals in suing the Biden administration for violating their First Amendment free speech rights. They claim the federal government coerced social media platforms to suppress conservative voices by taking down posts deemed misleading.
Pressuring platforms in back rooms, shielded from public view, is not using the bully pulpit at all. That's just being a bully.
While lower courts sided with the states, the justices seem to favor the Biden administration.
I mean, actually inaccurate about something the troops are doing, U.S. troops are doing, and they're, you should take that down. It's factually inaccurate. It's harming the war effort. It's not accurate.
Brad Jacob from Regent University says the heart of this case depends on whether or not the federal government took part in coercion.
But I think that's really the whole issue. Was this just a gentle, hey, we'd like you to kind of encouragement, or was this, you better do this or you're going to be in trouble, with maybe implicit sanctions? How much did the government push is really the issue.
He adds another key is that social media companies are privately owned and operated.
My guess is that the court is going to largely position itself as saying social media is private business. It doesn't have to respect the First Amendment. If you don't like the way Twitter, X moderates your speech, then don't use that platform.
The Biden administration argues they do not use coercive threats to control platforms' editorial content. There's also been no punishment if or when the companies decline to moderate flagged content. A ruling is expected in June. Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Abby. Well, now to the controversy over transgender medicine in minors. Here in America, states are battling over the issue of restricting gender transition medicine and procedures for kids. Now, from the United Kingdom comes a major decision. The National Health Service will no longer prescribe puberty-blocking drugs for children. CBN News' Charlene Aaron reports on the impact it could have here in the United States.
The UK decision banning puberty blockers for children followed an independent review, citing safety concerns and limited research on long-term effects. The National Health Service concluded there is not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty-suppressing hormones to make the treatment routinely available at this time. Former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss applauding the ban.
I'm delighted that the health service is now saying that no under 18s can be prescribed these drugs.
Here in the U.S., a recent study shows nearly 20% of all people identifying as transgender are aged 13 to 17. That's close to 300,000. The number of kids known to be on puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones has more than doubled in 4 years, from close to 2,400 in 2017 to more than 5,000 in 2021. Sarah Parshall-Perry of the Heritage Foundation blames gender ideology for fueling the rise.
We're seeing this increase because young people are vulnerable to the impacts of peer pressure, social media, cultural elites, and again, what they are hearing from their commander-in-chief and the individuals in positions of power in this country.
Effects are linked to poor mental health among children struggling with gender confusion. Research also found that 34% of trans youth have experienced a decline in mental health while taking the drugs. Physicians say major concerns include risk of sterility, lifelong dependence on medication, and anguish of regret. Nathaniel Blake of the Ethics and Public Policy Center.
They are experimenting on children with no real understanding of what they're doing. With regard to sterility, that is a real problem, and that is inevitable for some of these treatment pathways.
More than 20 Republican-led states have adopted laws restricting medical intervention for children with gender dysphoria.
We've seen many of these bans enacted at the state level, 23 bans for procedures, cross-sex hormones, and puberty blockers for minors under the age of 18. My hope now is that this will encourage more states to pass bans for these procedures under the age of 18 in their states.
Back in Europe, more countries such as Norway, Finland, and Sweden are following the UK's lead. And Blake is hoping that trend soon includes the U.S.
I think it will happen. I don't think that it will be quite the same as in the UK, but I think all it may take will be one or two big lawsuits winning. And if there are major damages awarded to some of the people who have been hurt by gender transition, that might break the industry, which has simply been able to profit off of injuring people and has not yet been held accountable for that.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thank you, Charlene. Gordon, back over to you.
Well, it's wonderful to hear that medical science is stepping up to common sense to say, no, we don't have enough information here. And the UK study is a peer-reviewed study showing that this could actually harm teenagers. It's wonderful. I hope it spreads across the nation. It's like we have this, we've lost all common sense on this issue. We need to protect our children. I don't want to wait for some massive lawsuit. When you see this kind of damage coming, let's stop it and say no. If you're an adult, you're 18 and over, and you want to make your own decision, great. But if you're a minor, no, we shouldn't be inflicting this kind of harm on you.